Welcome to the 8th podcast, Discipleship at Home. In the last session, we talked about physical discipline as an effective and biblical form of discipleship. In this session, I would like to talk about the incorrect technique of spanking, in which we will discuss 4 serious mistakes parents make when they spank their children. Let's talk about some incorrect techniques of spanking here. We must not spank our children while angry, and I've just talked about that already. And I think it's kind of obvious why that could be harmful. You're also not being logical. Sometimes if you're spanking out of anger, maybe maybe it's really the other son's fault. You know, you're spanking the wrong person. You responded out of anger and emotionalism without really considering what happened here. You know, I made lots of mistakes as a father. You know, we all do. It's a lot of trial and error. But anger is one of those things that we need to try to avoid when it comes to discipline. Number 2, never spank your children in front of others. See, that's a no-no too. Because your job is not to humiliate them and embarrass them. That's not what this is all about. It's correcting their behavior, but not humiliating them. And so I always sent them to the room and took care of it up there. What do you do when you're at the store? Well, you don't spank at the store. I would tell my children, Jamie, as soon as we get home, you're going to get a spanking. And then when we got home, as soon as we got our coats off or whatever, as soon as we got in the door, I'd say, Jamie, I want you to go to your room. I'll be up in a minute. He knew what was happening, but I always had to follow through. Never threaten your children and don't follow through, because they learn very quickly what they can get away with and what they can't get away with. Okay, well, as far as spanking?
Yeah, like, we'll do that when we get home.
Oh, as far as the store?
Yeah, or even,
Yeah. You have to bring up and remind them what they did in the store and so forth if you think they forgot. But they'll begin to learn. If you tell them at the store, you better behave or I'm going to, one more time, and I'm going to spank you when I get home if you do that again. And so just warn them, and then you have to follow through with it if they disobey, but then remind them what it was that they did wrong when you send them to the room. Yes?
What do you think about the bathroom in the store or something? That's what happened to me as a kid.
Well, the problem is people will walk in on you when you're in the middle of it, and it can be counterproductive. And plus you have all the grief of people thinking that you're abusing your child and everything else, and it is not against the law, but it's just better to save it for home. And it usually worked for us to warn the child, and then if they're young, to remind them what they're being spanked for when they got home.
Do you think there's like a too young?
Yes. I mean, when your child is an infant, 3 weeks old, you can tell that he's crying because he's angry. I could see the fallen nature in my baby. You know, he's angry. He's not just crying because he's hungry. I can see anger in his face. Do you remember that when they're very young? But he's too young to spank. But I'm just saying you can see wrongdoing even when they're little. I basically would start even when they're 6 months old. Now, you might think, though, that's too soon. I didn't spank him with a paddle or anything like that, but let's say Jamie was going after something, crawling on the floor, and I'd say, Jamie, no. And he'd look at me, and he'd go do it anyway. So I'd come to him, and I'd take his hand, and he'd say, no. And he'd cry for a couple minutes. I didn't hit him real hard, but just enough to sting a little bit. And then the next day, he'd be going after that thing he's not supposed to. And I'd say, Jamie, no. He'd look at me, he'd look at that, and then he'd go the other way. It was amazing how quick he learned that he has to do what Daddy says. So not a heavy form of discipline at that age, but it could start as young as 6 months, just something like that, to help them to learn they have to start doing what Daddy says. And when Daddy says no, that means that he can't do that. I had one person tell me, well, I wait until my kids are in grade school before I spank them, because she had one child, and it was a preschooler. She said, I'm going to wait because they're too young now. And if you wait until they're in grade school, you've lost a lot of the battle already, because the grade school is huge. the Catholic Church says, give me a child until they're 6, and I'll have them for life. If you avoid the grade school, it's a beautiful opportunity for teachable moments and changing the heart. And we'll talk more about how to do that in just a minute. But don't wait until they're older. You've lost some tremendous opportunities for molding your child if you wait. How hard you spank them and so forth, that's different. That changes, And when my kid was in potty training, he was 3 years old or whatever, maybe I pulled his diaper down and I just lightly spanked him so it'd sting a little bit, but they can't feel through a diaper, so that was an important thing. Yes, Mark.
Story. I remember my brothers and sisters, what we would do, we knew that we would get ready to get a spanking, so we would put books and stuff in our hands like that. So it only worked one time, and then next time Mom saw that they were square.
I just wanted to interject the fact that we would be spanking or disciplining all the time if we don't get our houses child ready, so we don't have glass objects everywhere, so we don't have to say does and thank yous, and then decide also what's important and what's not important, to make some discerning decisions that way, so that we're not always on there, so that we're doing it, but we're not doing it all the time. I think those are...
Children by nature are careless, and so if you don't house-proof your house, there are going to be some things broken. It's not on purpose, but children are how often do your children spill water at the table? Did they do that on purpose? No. They're children. So I don't take my children upstairs and spank them because they knocked the glass over. It's not a discipline issue. It's just carelessness. Tomorrow I might be the one knocking the glass over. Who's going to take me upstairs? We all do that, but children do that all the more. And so house-proofing your house is a good thing when you have, especially preschoolers, so that you're not, you do want to teach them, but you don't want to be on their back every second. They're exploring, They want to get into the cupboards. Put locks on the ones that have the poison stuff, but let them get into the pans or whatever. It doesn't hurt anything. And then if you get to the point where you don't want to, put a lock on it. Then you don't have to be on their back about it. Okay, but we talked about number 2, never spank in front of others. And then number 3, never make threats you don't intend to carry out. This is a big one because parents do this all the time. They're yelling at the kids, and even to the point where they'll say, I'm going to knock you into the next town if you don't straighten up. Well, they learn you're not going to do that, or they learn really that your pitch of voice has got to be at a certain level before they have to listen. Don't threaten them unless you're going to carry it out. Don't say, Jimmy, if you don't get your room ready, you can't go to Grandma's with us. Are you really going to leave them home by themselves? No. And your child knows that. So don't make threats you don't intend to enforce.
Just a quick point on that, me and my wife had 2 different methods of doing stuff, I guess I should clarify that I only spank my kid once, but my wife constantly would, do little things. So there's 2 different methods that work, and when you're divided in your methodology, then if you're threatening one thing, and somebody stops you from carrying out that threat, that creates a division in the kid that they figure out real quick.
Yeah, it's really, really bad to be inconsistent with your spouse. But that's why evaluate it based on the Word of God, and then try to follow what the Word of God says. Here's number 4, don't warn multiple times, raise your pitch of your voice. We've already talked about that. Just tell them once. Isn't it better to, instead of nag them and yelling at them, just to tell them once? Being strict is a good thing because they know what to expect, and instead of yelling at them all the time and nagging them.